Hello, everyone. This is kind of the Granite Mountain Movie Club. We're going to be talking about sports today. I don't know if I'll do it. I've thought for a long time about doing like kind of a separate show that's just sports. And you know, a lot of people online, I don't seem to not like sports, but I think there's like a minority of guys who like sports and, are able to sort of just watch it and not give into the globo homo messaging or whatever that it's embedded in the NFL or the NBA or something. They can just sort of watch it and take it for the sport itself and then leave it at that. But I sort of left sports for a long time, but I've gotten back into it the last year or so, and I'm having fun with it. I'm liking watching sports. Part of it is that I figured out how to do it online. So anyway, I'm not sure if I'm going to do a whole show about it, but I got DegreeStudies here today. He's also kind of a sports guy. He probably knows more than me, actually. Well, definitely knows more than me. I'm totally a novice. I've been away from it for a while. So how you doing, DegreeStudies?
I'm all right, and yeah, I'm a big sporto and sports fandom defender. I think I might have said something similar on the podcast before, but my notion with it is that, like, I don't know, I've always felt in my life that you need some sort of balance. Like, even since I was a little kid, I've had very nerdy interests, and also liked sports. And one of the arguments I see now is like, oh, you're watching sports when you should be at the gym, or you should be reading theory, or like doing political activity. Like, I guess the idea is there's only so many hours in a day, and like consuming slop entertainment undercuts your ability to do like real things in the world, however that's defined. But I don't know. For me, I have never been a person that's going to be able to be productive like 16 hours a day, or even 12, or even 8. Like, the way I stay sane is through some balance of productive activities and distractions. And I think
Mm-hmm.
as distractions go, like, sports is a certainly fine one. I don't see what the big deal is.
Yeah. I mean, I in some ways I kind of get it, because I know like the NBA in particular, that is one I have not really returned to. Partly because of changes in the game itself. It doesn't seem as interesting as it was when I was a kid. But also some of the personalities of the players and things, I sort of over time I do find myself being like, well, those people they don't like me. Like, they definitely don't like me. And I don't really want to cheer them on or anything. Football seems a bit different. Football is, the players have helmets. They're more anonymized. They're not as much in the media, except for maybe quarterbacks and some wide receivers and running backs, maybe. Other than that, you don't hear a lot from specific players. They don't seem and tend to be as political. And then when they are, they sometimes even lean like our direction. So, that one's been a lot easier and more appealing to me to get back into.
Yeah, football is definitely the most unique and American sport. And I don't know, that there's also something, I don't actually want to make an argument that like consuming sports is right wing, because obviously there's all these dumb things happening, and I sort of agree with the criticisms of like Barstool Americans, and sports gambling is obviously bad, but even though I do it sometimes, but I think it's sort of a scourge and should be outlawed. But I think there's a reason sports have always been popular, both to participate in and to spectate. And I think there's just something compelling about really intense physical competition. And, some of the people who even say like sports are bad or whatever, they're into UFC or MMA, which, like, that makes sense. It's a little bit, I think some of those earlier sports, they're like more pure because they're less integrated into the broader culture. So they have less like annoying frills and personalities. So that's fine. And obviously people don't have to watch sports, but I don't know. There's certain things that I'm always going to find compelling, and like really high level physical competition is one of them. And definitely, I mean, I can't like I don't really have the options to arrange my life around this, but I feel like I'd be a person who, if there was ever like a minor league hockey or baseball team in my town, I think I'd go all the time because I
Yeah.
think watching it in person is like particularly fun.
Yeah. I like that sort of thing. I'm in an area where there's some high schools that have like a lot of NBA talent. I don't go to the games, but I have thought many times. I'm like, I should I become, and maybe when I'm a little older and my kids are older and stuff, I might do this. But like, should I be one of those guys that just goes to like random, not random, but goes to high school games for schools I have no attachment to, just to see like future NBA players and stuff, or go to high school football games to see good players. I've thought about doing that sort of thing too. Um, part of what makes sports compelling to me is that, unlike almost like we use the phrase like fake and gay, and there are aspects of sports, especially the leagues themselves, that are fake and gay, but sports is one of the only places where you find um one of the only like mass market things where you find like a presentation where you don't know what's going to happen. um with most films or most like narrative based things, you can pretty much determine the path it's going to take, or you kind of know what it is from the trailer. And sports are predictable in a sense, like you have underdogs and all, and favorites and all that. But just turning it on any given, like, there's always a chance you're going to see something that no one anticipated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I think too, I watch a lot of entertainment too. I'm like, TV and movies, I sort of slop max. And yeah, if you get too good at watching TV or movies, like a lot of it is rendered a little bit inert because you sort of get the beats and know what's going to happen, and something has to be pretty good to like still make your dopamine hit or whatever because you're
Yeah,
familiar
yeah,
with
yeah.
the plots. But sports is more volatile than that.
Well, and there's this other thing too, where so for some people this is probably a huge negative, and that makes them not interested. But for me, it's interesting. There's this thing where when you turn on, like, especially like an NFL game, like a Sunday night or Monday night game, it's like a lot of people are also doing this at the same time. And to me, that's always kind of been interesting, like, to tune into something that a lot of people are tuned into live. It's like the sports is like the only live thing still too, right? It's the only viable television product anymore, because it's live and people want to see it live. Um, but I don't know. I've always had this weird sense of like, hey, everyone are like, the third or quarter of the country or something is like doing the same thing as me right now, and I it can go on Twitter or something and like talk about it as a bunch of other people are also talking about it. That's always been sort of interesting to me and appealing as well. Um, so for these reasons and others, like I still, a lot of it just goes back to you grow up with it, you got into it, you like it, and you're not going to shake it. So, and I know you're from a great sports city. It's like I think you have like all the major sports and they're all kind of good. But yeah,
Yeah, and it sort of
yeah,
shifted while I was in high school. Like uh, I think the '80s when I was born was like a great Boston sports time, and then the '90s were a bit of the doldrums. And then as I got into early high school, the teams started getting good again, and it was like a very exciting time. So I think that's a big part of it too. Is like if you're in a city and you're a kid or an adolescent, when something magical happens, you might just have the sports bug for life.
yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so like what I was thinking of doing here is we're coming up on, now that we have this college football playoff, this particular weekend, it might become like the ultimate football weekend. And it might be, I'm anticipating it could become like, this annual trend. People make a big deal of it. Maybe they'll come up with a name for it if there isn't one already. Maybe there is. There's much bigger sports guys than myself. But so we're going to have the college football playoff final on Monday, the 20th, same day as the inauguration, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But then we also have, over the weekend, we're going to have NFL divisional playoffs. So we're gonna have, what was it, five games in total. They're all very high stakes, all like the best teams in the respective college level and the pro level. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. I don't even end up watching that much, but I sort of track the scores on my game or on my phone, and then watch a little bit, as I can. But I was thinking we could do some picks, and let me see, what's the first game that will happen. So tomorrow, Saturday, we got the Texans and Chiefs, Commanders and Lions, and then Sunday we got the Rams and Eagles, and the Ravens and Bills, and then on Monday we'll have the college game. So I was curious where your head was at in some of these, and maybe we'll start with the Texans and Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, as a Pats fan, I'm scared of the Chiefs. I'm scared of Patrick Mahomes. I think the line is 8. I don't know if you want to talk about the lines, but
yeah. Yeah. I'll say the lines thing. The lines. So I didn't even really understand sports gambling until this year or last year, because I don't gamble, so it's not something I ever really knew much about. Like, and the lines, I didn't really understand how it worked. I found it always confusing. It's like, why it's -8 and then -105. Like, what does that mean? But I've understood how it works now, and I think it adds a dimension to the game for good and bad. Like I do think it makes it more interesting. It makes it more interesting for prediction purposes and things like that. And so yes, I find it useful to add in, and it's become so big. Like now, like I was listening to Colin Cowherd just like today, and he keeps talking about the line. All these guys, I think they're all being told, like, they have sponsorships from the betting sites, and so they're like, you need to be bringing up gambling all the time. Like, you need to be mentioning lines and overs, unders, all this stuff all the time. And I feel like, because I used to listen to like sports talk radio, it came up, like it would come up, but it was not every single conversation. But now it's like every conversation.
no, and I think on some of the major channels, they even would explicitly were instructed to avoid the line because like they didn't want. So if they gave picks, they'd just be picking a straight winner, like not with a handicap.
Or they might put a number on it, but they wouldn't do it in the context of gambling. They'll just be like, if I'm thinking Patriots by a touchdown, like,
sure,
but it wasn't like Patriots beat Vegas.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know. I can give some line-based analysis. I just said I don't approve of sports gambling, but obviously I follow it. And I don't know. 8 is a weird line, over.
It is. It's technically 8.5.
It's 8.5. Okay.
At least I'm looking at DraftKings. I know it differs from book to book, but
I'm sure that's right. It's just like the point to me is just if it's over a touchdown in a playoff game, that's weird. And like the Chiefs, their whole MO this year is they win close games. So I expect the Chiefs to win, but I probably expect them to win by 7 or 3. So I think, I would probably, maybe it's a stay away because I was going to say like I would take the Texans to cover the 8.5, but I do think the Chiefs are a much better team. So maybe I just wouldn't bet that game.
Yeah, my sense on this one, I don't know if the Chiefs have been like, I'm not sophisticated enough to really like make this claim. I haven't watched enough to really know this, but my sense, I wonder if they've been holding back a little bit for like injury purposes, and then maybe they're just emphasizing like game management, so they are just winning close games. But I do wonder if now it's like, okay, it's the playoffs. They haven't played in like 2 weeks or something, and they didn't really play their final game. They just I mentioned it to someone. I'm like, are the Chiefs going to just let Denver win? Like, is that how this works at the end of the season? If you don't really need that game, they're like, no, they're not going to let them win. They're going to try, but they're not going to try that hard. But then that game happened, and it felt like they just let them win. Like it did feel like they didn't try. And so they haven't, like, a lot of their starters have not played football in like 3 weeks. maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. I don't know, but I'm thinking they go all out and easily cover. That's my sense of this, is that are just they just way outclass Houston and are able to. I would not be surprised by a 2 touchdown win or something.
Interesting. Okay, I agree
That's my
with you
sense,
that
but I'm not putting money on it, so I don't know. Like, it's easy to say, but
no, I think your theory that like they may have been holding back, I think that could be true. Like they've done just enough to win in every game, and or in most of their games, and like that's not the sort of dominant offense they've had in the past. So we'll see.
yeah. Um, do you think? Do you anticipate Chiefs in Super Bowl and winning?
Um, I guess I would bet. It's funny. This is one of those things. Do you ever do the thing where if you think about like who do I think is going to win the Super Bowl, you'll think one team, but then if you take it game by game, you'll have another team coming out on top?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think the thought I have in my mind is that, three-peating is incredibly hard. Like I'm not sure how many teams have done it, or even if teams have.
Did the Patriots never do that with all
No.
their? Oh, okay.
And because I think in the abstract, my opinion is like Josh Allen or Lamar will beat Mahomes one of these years. Like one of these years, their team will do enough to beat him and get to the Super Bowl and win. But I think that looking at each individual matchup, I think the Ravens and the Bills are playing this week. Like, I think if assuming the Chiefs win and one of those teams wins, I'll probably want to pick the Chiefs in that matchup. But I guess it's more fun to just go against the Chiefs. So maybe I think the Bills are going to beat the Ravens and then the Bills will beat the Chiefs. Maybe that'll be my prediction. I think Josh Allen gets over the hump.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I should also say I know the Chiefs are like, I know they are the sort of hated team because they've had so much success, and then they also are, the recipients of what appears to be favoritism. Like a lot of calls go their way, a lot of seemingly pretty bad calls, including some bad calls, and then they've got the whole Kelsey brothers, the whole Travis Kelsey thing. Like he's sort of being, I don't want to call it like astroturfed. I think it's just intentionally turfed. Like he's obviously got a team, like a PR team, him and his brother, and they're building up this big brand for when he no longer plays football. And he's dating Taylor Swift, and presumably given their ages and the way this is playing out, they're going to like actually get married and have kids and stuff like that. But it all feels like part of this bigger branding thing. And it's, so like I say, not astroturf, just it's all very intentional and planned. And so they are annoying in this way. Like they're normally I would really, really not like them. But Andy Reid, he is like, so this is like an ethnic thing. Like he's an LDS guy, coached at BYU briefly before the NFL. And I also like, there's someone else that kind of works at the Chiefs organization that I know, that I grew up with and stuff. So for these reasons, I like them. I've been happy to see Andy Reid like get his, after all, he was close a few times in Philadelphia, and I always felt bad for him, but now he's
a likable character.
Yeah,
both as an individual and the type of football he plays. Like he's a creative offensive mind who's always like innovating. And the Chiefs do now do this stuff where they have some design pass plays where they do laterals after the initial catch. And I always wondered if someone would try that, because obviously it's like a very high danger play, but it's very cool. So I sort of appreciate him as a person who pushes the envelope like that.
Yeah, and maybe he's the reason for this, but it seemed like that's gotten bigger this year. Like, like I mentioned, I watched maybe like one game a year over the last 10 years, but then this year I watched quite a lot. relative to what I used to watch. Uh, Probably more like 20 or something, including college and pro together. And I was like, wait, I don't remember this many like pitch passes and stuff like that. Like, when did they start playing rugby? Like it seemed like a lot of games had that once or twice in the game. Which yeah, like I say, I'm all for it. Like it's sort of like the just an evolution. If you can do those, if you can do those without fumbling them or throwing them to the other team, kind of cool. It's kind of a cool change. um, okay, let's move on to the next Saturday game, which is the Commanders at Lions, and this one is the same spread, 8.5. Any thoughts there?
I guess just I'm a Lions believer, so I just assume the Lions will win. I think Jaden Daniels is really good, but uh, it's first year. I don't expect them to be able to uh, take on a more experienced team like the Lions. So I think the Lions will beat them. Again, though, that
Yeah,
that
yeah.
spread seems kind of high, but I guess the Lions score a lot, so it could get out of hand.
Yeah, I think I have almost the same take as the other game for this one. I think uh the Lions, I'm a Lions skeptic a bit. I know they won a ton of games, but ultimately it's the Lions, you know? Like there's I kind of believe in uh I don't know, just like history and destiny and things like that. I kind of just believe like the Lions, I don't know if they've shaken, they've just always felt cursed in my lifetime at least. So I'm I just can't. I don't think it's quite time for them, but I do think they're better than the Commanders. They got a lot more going on, and the Commanders have had a really cool run. And it's crazy that um they turned things around as fast as they did. I really hate their new name. I don't even. I mean, I actually heard that the tribe that they used to like license the Redskins from or whatever. They kind of like there was some tribe that they would like pay off to basically sign off on the name, and that tribe is now like being like, hey, can we go back? Can we do that again? Like, let's get that name back. Let's do it. Let's we didn't mind. We kind of want we want that. Anyway, I don't like the Commander's name, but it is amazing how they've turned the organization around as fast as they did. And then yeah, Daniels has had this really good run, but yeah, I think it all stops here. I think they lose like bad. I think it ends up being a 2 touchdown game as well. Again, not financial advice, but I think the both Saturday games will be pretty ugly.
Interesting.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Is there any other interesting storylines from that one?
No, I think yeah, like the main thing is just that the Commanders, it's the like Lions redemption arc, and the Commanders have sort of had a horseshoe, uh, like a very lucky season. Um,
Yeah.
and one of those things will end, and I think we both think it's the Commanders.
Yeah. Um, and then we're going on. Okay, Sunday. First game is Rams at Eagles. That one has a 6 point spread in favor of the Eagles. What are you thinking there?
So this Eagles team is kind of weird. They had like a shaky start to the season, and since then, I think since September, they've won all their games or all their games but one. Um, and so that's a long time, but there's something slightly off about this Eagles team. Uh, but then the Rams aren't really that reliable either. So I think my guess would probably be that the Eagles survive and lose the game after this. Um, but I mean, I'm hedging all these picks, but I the Eagles seem susceptible to giving a bad performance. So I don't know if it'll happen this week or the following. I'd probably take the Eagles, but it would not be surprised if the Rams managed to beat them.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if there's like Stafford is good in the playoffs. He has a Super Bowl. Their coach seems he's like one of those young like overachieving guys who seems dialed in. I sort of like trust him more than the Eagles coach. Uh, to at least like I think he doesn't. I think the Eagles have the better team, but I think the Rams coach might be uh able to do something tricky to 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 pull off a win. Um, I'm tempted. I would be tempted. Like I would be tempted to at least pick the Rams to cover the spread. Yeah, I'm pretty interested in this one. I don't have it. It's not as perplexing as the next game, but yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it.
You
I
said
just
the
have a
line
sense.
is 6.
6, yeah, 6 even.
Yeah, then I'd probably take the Rams too because I think they can stay within. I think it'll be a close game.
Yeah. Okay, and then this is kind of the best game of the weekend. We got the Ravens at the Bills, and it's a 1.5 point spread with the Ravens favored. Just barely. So, um, I don't know what this one is like. This could. I would love for this to be the generational, like it's just some epic game that it has the makings to be. It's going to be super cold. It's like 20. It'll be like a 20-degree game, and it's these two. Arguably, that's like it's the kind of the two MVP candidates matching up with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and um, I don't know. I hope it's as good as it can be. I hope they both show up and like I hope neither side lets it get away or anything. But I really don't know where to go with it. I guess my gut says Bills, but I think the Ravens are better. I think they kind of seem like a more solid team to me. But what's your thinking?
I guess my thinking is I think the Ravens are a better team, but I think Josh Allen's the better quarterback. Um, and a lot of times I'll just end up betting or taking the better quarterback.
Yeah,
And they
and
both quarterbacks have had great years, but I guess I just believe in Allen a little more.
that's because of racism, right?
Um,
No, I'm just joking.
no, I know, but I was trying to think what is my actual reason for believing him in more. I think I always liked him since he came out because he had such a huge arm, and the big question was like, will he become an accurate passer? And now he's one of the most accurate passers in the league. I don't know. I think he's a more obviously Lamar is one of the most unique players in the league with his running ability, but I don't know. I think Josh Allen is the slightly better quarterback.
I think the running the thing with Josh or no with Jackson and Derrick Henry running in a freezing cold game gives them a bit of an advantage. I feel like, uh, and then of course the Bills are at home. I don't know how much that matters at this level, or at least with these teams. Ravens beat them earlier in the season, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just excited for this one. Do you? How much do you end up watching? Do you watch a lot of games?
Um, I often will have games on in the background while I'm doing stuff, um, and then we'll sort of check in if the game gets particularly interesting. That's sort of my move.
Yeah, that's actually another. That's a lot of people when they will talk about like Europeans. They'll talk about American football and uh they'll be like, there's nothing happening. Like 3 hours of game time for 2 minutes of action, and it's like that's not. They think it's like a bad thing, but it's a feature, not a bug. Like you can have it on in the background. You can do other things and then just check in and out as the game goes on. Not every game is like some games are exciting every moment, but yeah, the downtime in football is it's weirdly. I find it weirdly um, comfortable or like cozy. Just how you get these breaks. Like, okay, maybe it makes it like the perfect second screen sport. You can go down to your phone, you can go make your little comments on the game in a chat or on Twitter, and then go back to the game. And it doesn't move too fast, so you can kind of be doing other things.
Yeah, the rhythm is good because I think with both baseball uh, and basketball are sports where like I will put them on, but sometimes when they're on, I never really watch. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'll get engrossed. I'll put the Celtics game on, but if they're up 10 the whole game basically, I'll be like doing something on my computer and I'll maybe look at the basketball game 10 times. And as long as like the lead remains about the same, I like won't get drawn in. And sometimes baseball's like that too. You know, if you don't catch like a random at bat where there's like a bunch of guys on and it's a close game or whatever, the game can just kind of come and go. And I don't even know
Mm-hmm.
how much attention I was paying. But yeah, football is this weird mix of like you can do something else, but a lot of the plays at least feel exciting, even if nothing ends up happening.
Yeah,
Like there's more moments that feel like individual high stakes moments.
yeah. A football game is long, but it also is a very like ADHD friendly thing because it just has these punctuated moments of big pass play or someone breaks a run, and then you can tune out for a moment. And that sounds, I don't know, that sounds like a really bad selling point, but it's actually one of its strengths. But I asked about you watching them because I don't watch very many, but I am really excited for that Ravens Bills. I hope to. The hard thing with kids is like you have to really design your day so that if you want to watch a football game, if you really want to watch it, you have to really structure your day around it to make sure it happens. So I'll have to figure out a way to make that one happen.
And so what's
Uh,
the move there? Is it like the kids need to be tired in the evening so they can sit and watch something, or you just have to make sure all the stuff that they need has already been attended to, or how does it?
yeah, that's a strategy. Like, yeah, like make sure you have a robust like day throughout the day. So my older son is starting to like want to watch stuff. So that's cool. Like, so he would probably watch it with me. But then, yeah, make them tired, get them tired, like figure out dinner like well in advance. Like some people are organized. I'm not. So we often do dinner. Like we're figuring it out like the moment we make it. So have that stuff figured out in advance, have like the bedtime routine like locked in or whatever, or just like planning to be okay, we're going to be at someone else's house. So who will have the game on, and you can be playing with their kids or something like that. Like but you got to think, you kind of got to think it through. Depends on the lifestyle and the age of the kids and all that, but that's where I'm at in this moment where they are the big consideration. Um yeah, so um okay, so then Monday got the college football championship. This is the first year of this playoff format, right?
Yes.
So they had 12 teams. There was all sorts of controversy about how exactly those teams would be determined. Some teams get in just by winning their conference, and then other teams get in based on somewhat subjective, like, you know, analysis by a panel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think early in the first 2 weeks of the playoff, it seemed like people were eager to declare the playoff a failure, or at least the selection of the teams. They were, but I don't know if that's totally fair. Here, my take is that it's not really fair because I mean, you still look at the NFL playoffs; like they have blowouts too, um, and or even the like NBA might have blowouts in the playoffs. Theirs is a little more equal or leveled because they have multiple games, so it's like the statistics start to work out a little differently. But um what did you think of the playoff so far though, of this whole, like, did you think this was it was a move in the right direction, or did it devalue like the sort of prestige and tradition of the bowl games or whatever?
Um I mean, in terms of the games themselves, I think the problem with this playoff is that there's like zero transcendent quarterbacks. I think
Mm.
I think Ewers is capable of being one, but it seems like he's been hurt all year. Like he's not moving right and he's not playing as well. So I think even compared to last year when you had like JJ McCarthy wasn't like a great quarterback, but he was doing some good things and Penix was really good. And I like good college quarterbacks. So like I'm kind of bored this year because it seems like everybody's playing. I guess the guy at Ohio State, Howard, is sort of coming on, but I don't really view him as like a blue chip quarterback. I think he just has great athletes all over the field, but I also
Mm.
have an anti Ohio State bias. But like Notre Dame often has good QBs, but like I don't think Riley Leonard is that special. So that aspect has made it a little bit more boring to me. But I think like the format is fine. I mean, I think obviously it's like really interesting to have a multi-week playoff. I think the like looming questions for the sport that actually, I think Chuck Klosterman was talking to Bill Simmons about, and you, me, and another friend were sort of chatting about this in a different chat we have, but just that like it makes less and less sense that these football programs are even attached to schools at all.
Yeah.
Now that there's NIL and also this like professional style playoffs. Um, so I do think I think like the format is entertaining. I'm enjoying the games, but I don't really understand what's going to happen to this sport um,
Yeah.
long term. But
And to me, that's especially at NIL. That's the main thing that that changes the. I had years ago. I had talked about this, like basically saying like, well, the teams ultimately will probably. I had predicted that they would basically just become like these offshoots of the university. They would like license the name of the university in their branding and stuff, but you might have players who never attended a class at that university, or players who aren't students at all anywhere. They're not student athletes. They just are amateur athletes or like sub pro development league. Like the college would basically just become a development league or something like that for the NFL. And I don't know if we ever get quite to there, but it does feel like we're trending in that direction. Even had like Nick Saban recently, he was talking about that too. He's like, I don't have the SEC they were salty about the playoff because they only got two teams in there and they felt like they deserved like three or four. Um, and I remember seeing like Nick Saban saying something like, well, I don't see how you ever make this fair unless college football just becomes like 40 teams who all play in a kind of balanced little leagues, and then you do a playoff based on that. Like he's like, maybe you could do that, maybe that's fair, but the way it works now is not fair because and his argument was that the SEC was getting screwed. But one, I think, very nice narrative of the playoff this year is that the SEC did not show up. Georgia lost in their playoff game, and then Texas lost. Texas showed up. I would say they at least showed up, but they lost. And then Alabama, who everyone thought like, or at least not everyone, but the SEC people all said like, oh, Alabama should have been in. They deserve to be in, even though they lost some bad games. But then they end up losing their bowl game. So that was the narrative has all sort of come out on the side I wanted it to come out on. But uh, I guess yeah, I'm happy with the playoff. There's nothing to not like about a playoff for me. I don't really care about any individual bowl, which kind of the good thing about college football is sort of the stuff that doesn't make sense. Like why is one bowl better than the other? Why are they on which days they're on? Why do the teams why is there such minimal like why is it so hard to know who's better? All that stuff. Like that's kind of what makes college football kind of fun.
yeah,
Um but there's nothing to not like about a playoff. For I think most sports fans, like it's you're funneling down the teams and you're refining it until you get the best two. Uh, so I've been
yeah,
pretty happy with it.
I think there's weird. I want to say something quick about the SEC. There's something weird going on with the SEC. Like, I don't know if this is sort of there's something in the Confederate soul about like lost causeism, but like I think there's a lot of evidence that the SEC is no longer as dominant as it once was, and there's lots of reasons for this. But like the SEC talking heads, I guess Saban being the premier one, are giving no ground. Like they think it's like a law of thermodynamics that the SEC is the best conference, and like there's a couple funny theories. I think a lot of more objective people accept that they're not, and there's funny theories on why they aren't anymore. One of them is that with transfers, like what the SEC used to be able to do is like if they recruit the top three D tackles, then it'll just be like, okay, the one guy plays a lot, the second guy rotates in, and the third guy, like, you'll maybe get more time as an upperclassman. And now it's like the third guy and maybe even the second guy will transfer if they're not
Uh-huh.
getting as much play time as they want. So like that's sort of a talent evening out through the transfer portal. But other people have just said like, isn't it funny that the moment every conference was allowed to pay players legally, the SEC immediately loses its edge? And that's kind of like a funny conspiracy theory.
Yeah, yeah. And very famously, it was what was it during the Notre Dame Georgia game and that panel. Shane Gillis is there with Nick Saban, and he's like, and he made that exact point. He's like, hey, now that it's not just the SEC paying their players, look what Notre Dame was able to do, and look what Oregon and Arizona State and stuff were able to do, and Nick Saban got really offended by this, and he tries to defend the honor of his coaching tenure at Alabama, insisting they never paid anyone. Which maybe there's some technical truth to that, but I think in reality they were paying these guys some way. And yeah, I think that's it. I think it's as simple as that. Like you lose depth because guys can, and the numbers have been pretty crazy. Americans just really love football, and they're willing to put money into it. Yeah, like those you're talking about, like the third guy on the depth chart or whatever can leave Alabama and go to, I don't know, just some school, and he can go to Pitt, and make like $100,000 for a year of his time,
Yeah.
and like that's crazy. That's the total leveler. Like it, and in some you could argue maybe like it's maybe that's bad in some ways because it was maybe a better game when 20 teams could sort of command all the talent, like draw in all the talent. Now it's getting spread out too much, and there's too many teams. Maybe I could see someone making that argument, like, um, but
Well, yeah, you said something earlier that I think is like, and I don't know exactly how to apply this to like our political content, but like, or like the part of Twitter we're on, but you said like all the best things about college football are the things that make no sense. And like, I kind of think that's maybe true of everything. Like, everything we really like or that develops its own unique culture is sort of like between the time when it's set up to be one thing and it's slowly transforming into something else. There's like a weird middle where it becomes truly unique. And like, I don't know, maybe I should go more reactionary and say like college football was the best when it was like all kids from the state, and there weren't that many games on TV, and it was a really like regional, localized thing. Like that probably was pretty cool. But for me as a
yeah,
kid, it definitely was this weird moment of like, this is sort of becoming a professional sport, but there's still all this weird pageantry to it because it's connected to the colleges. And like
yeah,
this makes no sense, and it'll probably end within your lifetime, but like you just have to enjoy that now. And it feels like now we're living through that end. But I feel like there's a broader point here that would be very relevant to like right wing Twitter people, because there's so much I don't know what to call it, like rational thinking, systems thinking, where you want to say like, okay, we have a certain outcome in mind. So how do you run everything to get to that? And like so many good things in the world are just, I don't know if I'm using this term right, but like emergent, or like they come out of weird circumstances
Yeah.
and were not really designed, but just accidentally happened. And like they sort of, because of that, maybe are hothouse flowers and like they can't be maintained indefinitely. But yeah, it's sort of, I guess all of that is to say, like, it sort of feels like we're at the end of the college football that I grew up with. And like, I will certainly still watch, especially because, I love Bill Belichick and he's going to UNC. But I think within like 5 to 10 years, it'll be very different, I suspect.
Yeah, I might even be more aggressive than that. Might even I can imagine within like 3 years, it's just like kind of a totally different feeling. Oh, what I think would be really funny too is you get this could be quite fun actually. Even as you're losing like valuable traditions, it could be really fun if you get like I don't know what's a crappy small school that always sucks or isn't necessarily very like I don't know Ball State or something like that. Like just some small school that maybe has one like renegade billionaire graduate who made a bunch of money in crypto or whatever and just loves his school and he's just like I'm gonna buy all the good players and suddenly like there's some crappy school with like a 15,000 seat stadium competing like that would be kind of fun like, that would be kind of wild and silly in a fun way. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard that that's sort of what T. Boone Pickens did to Oklahoma State. Obviously, in a previous
Yeah.
regime, like in theory, they weren't paying players, but it's just this random situation of this energy billionaire graduates from this school and then is extremely generous to their football program, so they have like state of the art facilities, maybe in other sports too, and so they could start attracting better recruits. And yeah, that sort of thing is kind of fun.
um All right, let's look at the actual game itself, the national championship game on inauguration day. The Ohio State Buckeyes versus the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. What are you thinking here?
Um, it's weird. I've picked against Ohio State in both games so far. I thought Oregon was better, and I thought Texas was better. So I think because I don't like Ohio State, I'm sort of in denial. Um, and I am a Notre Dame fan, though this is not my favorite Notre Dame team. But I like their young coach. Um, so I'll certainly be rooting for Notre Dame. I guess the past two rounds I've sort of said like, no, this Ohio State team is sort of a fraud. I don't expect them to keep this up, and they keep looking really good. So I don't know. I think if I was doing like a merciless, totally objective, I need to win the bet. Perhaps I'd bet on Ohio State, but I certainly hope Notre Dame wins.
Um, so I thought I had Oregon. I thought the final was going to be Oregon and Georgia. And oh, by the way, did you see that the Georgia quarterback left for $7 million?
I saw something about that. Where did he go again?
Maybe I made up that number. Miami. He's going to
Okay.
Miami. I maybe I made up the number, but it was in the millions. But that's wild. He's making more than like Brock Purdy or whatever in the NFL. Um, but yeah, I thought Oregon and Georgia would be in the final. I thought Oregon. I had not. I don't think I had watched any full Oregon games this year, but I had watched a lot, or not watched a lot, but I'd watched parts, and they always looked to me. They always just looked like faster and like cleaner and more professional. Like they just seemed really, really good. And then they'd beat Ohio State earlier in the year in a close game. So I kind of thought Ohio State was good, but I thought Oregon was like the best. And then they just got embarrassed. Like they got destroyed. Um, I picked Ohio State to beat Texas. That one I emotionally wanted Texas to win. I'm a Sarkisian fan. He was the quarterback at BYU when I like started watching football as a kid, and he had like this really amazing year. They had a great run, and so I've always liked him, and I've wanted to see him succeed. But I knew Ohio State would win that one. I think Ohio State wins this one kind of easy. That's my suspicion. I think Notre Dame has done a lot of clever. I think they play clever. The coach seems really good, but I think Ohio State's just like stronger, bigger, faster, more skilled at like most positions. So I think they I think they get it kind of easy. That's my expectation.
Yeah, that's my fear anyway.
Yeah. And I don't have I've there was something weird growing up. A lot of people, for some reason, where I lived in Utah, of all places, they really liked Michigan. I don't exactly know why they liked Michigan. Maybe they just something about the Michigan brand was appealing to them, and so they like didn't like Ohio State for that reason, and just sort of being, I don't know, disagreeable or something. I sort of liked Ohio State. No real, just sort of to be like different among that group of people, but um so I have always kind of liked them, even though I do see them. What's the opinion on Ohio? Like, they have a lot of haters. What is it that people hate about Ohio State?
Um, I think it's really just success. Like, um, I'm sort of a Wisconsin fan, so I just resent the better teams in the Big Ten.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they've been. I mean, I know from the perspective of Ohio State fans, it's not. They're like they expect to win every year, so maybe they wouldn't say it's been like the best 5 year run or whatever, because I think they've lost to Michigan a couple times, so they're upset about that. But uh, I think generally people just like hate the really competitive programs, and some of them it's also like this is sort of fake, but schools like Michigan, who are also very good, they have this slightly more complex brand where they're both a big excellent sports school and a really good academic institution, which I think
Hmm.
makes some people feel like they can root for them more guilt free. Whereas like Ohio State, sort of, if you aren't from Ohio, I mean, there's smart people who graduate from Ohio State, of course, but it's if you're not from the area, it's just a sports school, and a fairly
Yeah,
like dominant one. So I think maybe that's part of why people don't like it.
yeah. Notre Dame used to be. I think there, like, there's a sentiment I've seen quite a bit around this game, which is the people are saying, "Oh, Ohio State has done what seemed impossible. They've made Notre Dame into like the people's team, America's team. Like people want to see Notre Dame win now. They used to hate Notre Dame, but now they like them. Um, so I know that Notre Dame used to kind of, but they haven't been very successful for a long period. So people, I guess,
But
are
Notre Dame's kind of like the Cowboys or Yankees too, where like at any given
yeah.
moment they probably have the most committed fans and the most committed haters. Um, like it's just a
Oh
very
yeah, yeah,
polarizing brand.
yeah. And going forward, I think Notre Dame has this. I mean, a lot of schools have a good alumni network, but Notre Dame has, I think, a particularly good one with a lot of wealth. And yeah, I don't know. I anticipate they continue to just be really good. Do they have? Maybe you don't know this. I thought I heard something about some different. They have like different self-imposed rules on the NIL stuff or something.
About NIL specifically, I don't know. I know that in the past, they did have like recruiting. It's both harder to get recruited there, like because of certain academic requirements, and I think they had more stringent rules about like what grades you had to be making to stay on the team. But I always assume this shit is fake because like I knew some people at UNC, and UNC is another sort of like a program that says like, oh, we never really push through because we keep academic standards. But then you'd like meet
Yeah.
kids at UNC who'd be like, oh, there's this whole informal program where you like take a class for an athlete, and I'm like doing that for this guy. You'd be like, okay, well, how could it get any faker than this?
Yeah, I remember I went to University of Utah, and they were really good when I was there. And there was a guy on the team who later he went to the NFL. He had a pretty good NFL career, very long career. And I remember on the last day of class, he showed up. I had never seen him in class before. He showed up on the last day and got some paper signed by the professor. And that was his entire involvement in the class. Like, he was still on the team. So he passed the class or whatever. They did something. I don't exactly know how it worked, but yes, I don't believe it was at most institutions it was taken very seriously.
Yeah.
All right, people can judge us by our picks. They'll see who got more picks right. I don't know if we'll do more sports content. I kind of like it, but we are also about to end, the football season, which is kind of the best part of the sports world. So,
yeah. In addition to the shitty weather, I will be sad about that.
Yeah. I get, I do look forward to like the fall and stuff when football comes back. It's pretty cool. Even when I'm not watching it, even when I was not watching very much, I was always just, I don't know. I just liked it. I'm like, oh, football's coming,
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming on and talk about this stuff. Hopefully we have really smart picks. And anything else you want to get into? You want to talk about the discourse on working menial jobs or whatever?
Oh man. No, I probably shouldn't step in unless do you have anything pithy to say about it? I don't think I have.
I don't have I've put my takes out there on Twitter. Like it's everyone. A lot of people have said this, and I think it's correct, which is just people are talking past each other. They'll bring up a specific example, and then when someone says, "Well, that's a specific example," the goalpost moving, talking past each other, confusing the general and the specific. Like that's kind of That's kind of what's defined this conversation. I'm on the team. I'm sort of on the not. I'm not on the Rufo, Matt Walsh, Cernovich side. I'm on the other side. And I'm kind of successful, like in terms of career and stuff like that. Like not really, but based on compared to what like they're talking about, like I'm fairly successful. And like I think they don't actually know what they're talking about when it comes to like corporate America, hiring practices and all that.
Well, yeah,
Basically,
I guess there is some stuff I'll say. One is that like industries are so different. So anybody who's been in media for like more than 10 years, which includes some of the people you mentioned, like they will not have good information about salaries, about hiring. And this is like a big problem with Twitter too. I'm not saying we have to always defer to experts, but like everyone who's angling to be a pundit will sort of generalize the experience from their little sector of the world out into the broader economy, and like it's not always appropriate. The other thing I'll say, because I've had experience with this, and I was talking to a few people about this, is like it is not so simple as swallowing your pride and then you are allowed to move down the status ladder to a stable, high-paying job that you just hold your nose at. Like there are real pipelines of communities and types of candidates. Like I've had spells of unemployment earlier in my career where I moved home and tried to get a service job, and the hiring people were like, well, you went to grad school and like have had a real job before, so like we think you're going to leave. So we're going to hire either someone with a high school education or a recent immigrant. I mean, they didn't say the last part explicitly, but I knew like they didn't want to hire someone who potentially had leverage out or had like, and so there's things you can do. There's ways you can change your resume and your presentation. But I think this is like a constant aspect of the discourse that people are sort of like, if you get your own ego out of your way, you can go wherever you want in the economy. And that certainly has not, as long as you're like willing to move down. And that has not really been my experience. My experience is that like when you spend time in a somewhat clouded up career, and then like in your little neck of the economy, jobs get scarcer or you lose a job, and you try to move to things that in theory hold less clout, like they're sometimes looking at you just as like, well, you're not really a person who comes around here, and like we don't know what to do with you. So like
Yeah.
I don't think it's a correct model to just say like, oh, if you can't break in with a coding, outfit after you get your software engineering degree, just go to the restaurant. Like I don't know what they'd think about such an applicant.
Yeah, they might call you college boy, and well, like they ignore that those, like the Panda Express manager job is literally not designed for them. It's designed for someone who doesn't have family in the area, or um like doesn't have an interest in like being a part of like whatever community they live in. It's like they designed the role for like an immigrant um who can like commit the hours, and uh like they want a sort of a certain interaction or relationship with the person that they hire for that job. And so like they'll say, oh, are you too good for the Panda Express job? And it's like, I don't think I'm too good, but Panda Express probably thinks I'm too good. Like they don't want me either.
Right.
um
Yeah, this
and
is the point I'm trying to make, is that there's something with the economy that I think older people don't understand, where like you're so slotted into roles. And if roles that you're appropriate, and it is true that people consider how to re-represent themselves, or they do really well in interviews and they manage to get themselves in positions that they would not slot into perfectly. That's true, that happens, but that's less typical, and usually you have to know someone. And so like if the slot that your resume perfectly fits into is unavailable, and you say, okay, I'll just move down the clout ladder, people are still just going to say, well, you don't fit. Like
yeah.
they're not just going to say, oh, you're proletarianizing yourself, I should help you with that, because that's very brave of you.
Yeah, I had a friend actually who was pretty accomplished, and he wanted to get a job at McDonald's, just because he had a period in his life where like he could do that, and he was so it was admittedly it was like an intellectual pursuit for him, sort of like a slumming it sort of thing. But he didn't frame it that way to them. Like he just applied in earnest. Like, and but I don't even think they sniffed him out. Like I don't think they knew his true intentions. I think they just saw like, no, you're not, like this doesn't work. We've maybe hired people like you before. We just know it doesn't work. And like you probably start, if you hire a guy like that, like he wants to change things, and they're like, no, we don't want anyone who wants to change anything. Like we want
Yeah,
people
or
who
he
just,
just leaves after a week because like he
yeah,
can't actually handle that environment.
yeah. And there's other. I mean, I think like Rufo is guilty in this conversation of using a lot of bad numbers. Like, I think that 70K figure, I think was for. I could be wrong, but I think that was for a Panda Express, like where he lives outside of Seattle in a very expensive area, or it was like it might have even been for New York. And like that's not a good amount of money to make in those areas. And then he also used some like UPS driver numbers. And he's like they make 170K including benefits, if you include the benefits. And like he didn't even look at the PDF because that included like that was over a period of multiple years. There's like they were saying like it was some document saying like the average UPS driver makes X amount over X number of years.
It's
He
also, I
just like,
never like the with benefits thing, because like obviously health insurance is a huge perk, but like
yeah,
because of the way health insurance, if you ever do that, it'll just look like someone has a double salary, because like
yeah,
healthcare is so valuable. Um,
yeah. And the other thing about this UPS thing is it's like you only make that much once you've been there for like 7 years. Like you have to, uh, Like they don't let you drive. You can't just go be a driver at UPS. You have to join, and then you first have to work in like the warehouse and loading vans. And after you've done that, it's like the rice guy at the sushi restaurant. Like you have to do like 7 years of like perfecting the rice before they let you touch the fish. Um, so yeah, they don't. That's not like some job you could just go get if you're like down on your luck. Uh, anyway, it's. I thought the whole thing was like really silly, and a lot of people were obviously using it as some sort of just an excuse to tell their war stories about how hard they worked. And that's the other thing too. I made a joke about this. Like I joked like everyone should just go do the thing that only works because no one does it. Like if everyone starts dumpster diving, like dumpster diving as a practice becomes worthless. Like if everyone tries to move to like the weird place, the shack or whatever, like oh suddenly there's no more shacks or shacks are now expensive. Like none of this stuff doesn't like or you're getting people who are giving advice like well just do what I did or do something like what I did and then they proceed to outline this like extremely high risk plan uh that happened to work for them but if you did that same plan and it didn't work they would just be like oh you were dumb why did you do that but uh like they're not giving like actionable insights and not only that but it's like not really like one side is trying to have a policy conversation, like basically saying like the median IQ, median person experiences this, and we should probably design a system where the median person experiences something better than that. And then the response is always this highly individualized response, like, well, the median person is lazy. Well, it's like, okay, well, we're always going to have the median person, so like we're not going to like mass. Like, do you think that there's like we can just write like some pop songs that celebrate hard work enough that people will start like people will suddenly become good at work? Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think we already had that period of our history. I actually think like a lot of what's happening is that, um, we were talking about the hothouse flower of college football. I think another hothouse flower is like you create a society with these select conditions where it is so plausible that any individual person could sort of like, take a massive leap in their personal net worth in one generation, that like you kind of have the whole society, from the bottom to the top, believing in a culture of hard work, or at least paying lip service to it. And like, I just think there's a lot of gnashing of teeth that like that's over. And it is sad that that's over in a way. Like, you go to the rest of the world and nobody cares about their jobs. And like, all politics in all other countries is essentially class resentment. It's just
Mm.
like baristas and service workers organizing to try and get more from the state because they know that, without like a massive change in, public benefits, like their life is never going to change. Like, that's life on Earth, and that America wasn't like that for a period. Like, you know, and one of the reasons it changed here, obviously, is like we invited the world in. Like
Yeah.
we took people not raised in that culture, and I think the like Hananiac argument is sort of like, well, you can still you can still sort of reinflate the American dream by having some gauntlet that selects for hungriness and like only take, the 2% hungriest people from other societies. And like, it's probably not correct to say there's nothing to that, but it obviously is like a little different now, um, than it was in previous generations. I mean, I think like the particular Anglo-Protestant view of grinding and work culture is sort of a unique thing, and like it's different than, immigrants who come here and want to get rich and want to bring their family over. Which is not to say anything bad about those immigrants. It's just that, it's like the American work ethic historically is slightly different than just ambition. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
select by just bringing ambitious people in, you'll get something that possibly has good secondary outcomes. Um, but I think, as we're seeing, will be difficult for the native population. So yeah, I don't know. It's all very discouraging to me because I'm in my own extended job search, and Twitter is like an info hazard at the best of times, with people just saying
Yeah.
insane things about romance and work, and like definitely it's
Yeah.
you know I think sometimes I know this isn't true, but this is like the way I feel most of the time is I'm like, have I ever seen a good piece of advice on Twitter? And like I know the answer is yes, but the reason I have to stop and think about it is like the people I really just encourage everyone, like unless it's something very specific to your field or you're like literally introducing someone to someone you think they should date, I think everyone should just agree to never tell people how to proceed in their careers or love lives because it's like it's never insightful, it's always depressing and discouraging. um
Yeah, it usually amounts to like, have you considered doing more or something, which is kind of directionally correct. Like, it's unfortunate reality. I think like that basically. I mean, I know this for myself. Like, that's like no one's ever told me that and been wrong, but it's also not. I don't know, maybe not helpful, but uh,
Well, yeah, I
but
think Dave Green and Oren McIntyre have said this where they're like the whole point of like hard-nosed advice is that like it has to come from someone you love. It can't come from someone who's like literally a stranger and you're social and economic better. Like you're not going to appreciate that.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's wrap it up there, I guess. But actually, there was one thing I was gonna say because you were like I don't want to like tag you in threads or like name drop you too much, but like there was the thing with the Rufo job where he hired that porn actress or whatever instead of like I know there was people I know that applied for the job that didn't like hear back, and then there was also just I mean there's people I just don't. He says like, oh, I emailed people and no one gave me any good candidates, and like so I had you in mind. I'm thinking like, well, degree studies would be good at some job adjacent to journalism. I don't actually know what the job that girl does even is, but
well, I think one
um,
reason I actually remember not applying for that, and the reason is it's the title is investigative reporter, and like I do actually like I feel strong about my writing and stuff, but I've never done like I guess maybe I don't know if she has either, but investigative journalism seems like a very specific thing, and I was sort of intimidated by that.
yeah. Well, in that case, so I know a little bit about that, but I've never done it or anything. But I'm kind of I was making fun of someone in another chat because they were kind of saying that they couldn't do that job, and I was like, well, you're not able to like um ask people what, who, where, why, and when. Like that's like the job. Like you just like ask people, you just call people and be like, um, we heard this, is it true? And like, and you just keep doing that. There is a skill set, right? To a good reporter does have this like doggedness or whatever, a disposition or a temperament,
Yeah,
which maybe,
I think the thing that scares me about it is that, as you just pointed out, it's big with the phone, and actually, a lot of DC jobs I've had are big with the phone, and I think one of my big hangups in my career is like I'm always trying to make less calls than I need to make because
yeah,
like people on the phone are super fucking annoying. But
yeah,
got to get over that.
yeah, phone centric. That's true. So I think there is, and maybe there's a case for like, well, the girl who was in porn probably is pretty good at whatever this job requires. Like she's probably good at getting men to talk to her. First of all, she probably has no problem in that department. And she's also like, you have to be like very bold and kind of like delusional or reckless to be in porn. So, um,
Yeah, and she seems like
some
she gets fixated on things, which I think is a good quality for a reporter.
so yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's method to Rufo's madness. Maybe he hired the right person after all. Um, but no, I mean, we do see periodically these jobs that come up that are like, um, it's like, oh, we need this like someone who's really smart and can like just like read a paper and then tell a rich person what to think about the paper. And it's like, okay, most of my mutuals could do that job. And then you
Right.
see
Well,
who they hire, and that's
one
like
thing
some
that's
kid.
going on here, and I don't know Christina Button's like I don't know Christina Button's CV, but I think one thing that's obviously going on is that everyone in the online right says that they don't care about classic credentials and like institutional experience. But in reality, this is slightly different. Like what Chris Rufo means when he says that and what I mean when I say that might be different. Like I might be saying, um, yeah, I literally think if there's just like a smart, hardworking guy, maybe he's been like selling cars for 15 years. If he's really committed, though, uh, you should let him be like a reporter for you and see what he does. Whereas Rufo might mean like, no, it's fine if you went to a state school and only have 2 years of reporting experience. Like we're
Yeah,
not demanding that
yeah,
you graduated from Stanford and went to the Times. So I guess I'm just adding to the idea that people are talking past each other. But I assume that a lot of people thought Rufo was saying, just get me a smart person who thinks in a way that would make them a good reporter. And so he got a bunch of resumes with no reporting experience on it. And he was like, what the fuck is this? But it's like, you got to clarify, you know, how open minded are you actually being? I assume there's some miscommunications like that going on. And I've had that experience directly where like someone on Twitter was like, you're a sharp guy, you have the following basic skills, I'll put you in touch with this person. And then the second person was like, well, I don't see on your CV where you've done the exact thing I need you to do. And I was like, oh, okay, so
yeah,
we're not actually on the same page at all.
yeah. I've seen that. Um, okay, I think we hammered that one. I think those guys are wrong, but directionally wrong. I mean, they're correct in general. The stupid thing is, it's like, well, of course, like this concept of personal responsibility is correct. Like, of course, that's right, but that's not. We're talking about group level problems. We're not talking about what the individual must.
Well, yeah, I also think it sort of devolves out of the overall DEI argument where maybe like Rufo's a very valuable activist, but he may have a different attitude than other people. Because like I'm not advocating anything here, but I think Rufo's idea is like, let's return to colorblind America, and I think that I would be totally fine with that. But I just sort of assume, like in a country where the demographic situation is that people of European descent either are or going to soon become uh, no longer, a majority. Like they aren't going to stop sort of advocating. Like I think even if we can get this DEI shit out, I think like the cultural meme of people doing politics, like identity politics, is not going to go away. And so like obviously Rufo and I like if you think you can defeat identity politics, you should maybe do what Rufo's doing and be like, we need to relentlessly treat everyone like an individual and not talk about structural things at all. But like I think that will be very, very difficult to achieve. But if it
Mm-hmm.
could happen, I would certainly support it.
Yeah, I better wrap up. I have to go back to my email job.
Okay. Sounds good.